So doing my infamous Grok roast series, I was actually trying to figure out who was the worst. Hey, knock it off! I'm trying to ask the question who the worst labor secretary was, and you keep going on and on and on. Just get along with each other. Do you have to just bark at each other just to feel like you're alive? Can't you be nice? Can't you be nice? So who's the worst labor secretary? Should I get this puppy? Is that what needs to happen? Well, there's three contenders, okay? So let me just set this up first, right? Who's the worst U.S. secretary? Who's the worst labor secretary in American history? Now, I know you guys are Americans and you're big on civics and you definitely care about the leadership of your country. You're not just a partisan hack. You're not just picking one political party over the other. That you're a good citizen, a super citizen. You're paying attention to the leadership. And then when they do things you don't like, then you're, up in arms. You're pissed. Why would you? I didn't elect you to do that crap. Because you discern. You're good at discerning the truth. You're good at being skeptical. You're good at standing. That's what we love about you, America. You're super citizens. Alexander Acosta, Eugene Scalia, James J. Davis, Francis Perkins. Who do you think is the worst between Alexander Acosta, Eugene Scalia, James J. Davis, or Francis Perkins? I knew that James J. Davis was crap. He was the labor secretary under Hardin, Coolidge, and Hoover. And then hell, the labor secretary position didn't even exist until after he had walked away. So they're probably like, man, we need to just make a labor secretary the law of the land after this damn James J. Davis asshole. So the worst labor secretary clearly is Eugene Scalia. Eugene Scalia, remember that? Back in 2019, 2021, remember Eugene Scalia? I mean, this was only 6 years ago. Of course you know Eugene Scalia. Because you stay informed of current events. You stay informed of who is leading this country. I know you, America. He got criticism from labor advocates. Labor. You know what? If we didn't have laborers, nothing would get done. If there was a general strike, the whole thing would just come to a screeching halt. You fire the rower. That's what America does. I'll get back to that in a second. Eugene Scalia, he weakened worker protections during the COVID-19 pandemic. Under his watch, OSHA was criticized for issuing few enforceable safety standards, reducing inspections, having its lowest inspector count in decades. Critics, including former OSHA officials, argued this left workers exposed to hazardous conditions, especially in industries like meatpacking and retail. Scalia's deregulatory zeal, aligned with Trump's agenda, earned him praise from business groups, but scorn from unions and progressives who saw him as prioritizing corporate interest over labor. Well, that's brilliant, right? You put in a labor secretary that hates labor. You put in a labor secretary that's for the corporations, and you screw over the working class and the unions. I thought this asshole liked the working class. Now, you know somebody that's just as bad as Eugene Scalia was that Alexander Acosta. This is too much. So there's 5 puppies. If anyone is looking to adopt a puppy, contact me. I got to get them into a good, loving house. I had 5 of them in one cage, so I just took the I don't want to say the runt, but like the skinny one, the little one, the tiny one, the one that thinks she's just better than everybody. Athena, the goddess of wisdom. Whenever she's sleeping and she jumps up. Well, clearly it's not Athena, because I'm still hearing these barks. Could it be Artemis? I'm trying to talk about Alexander Acosta. Okay, so Eugene Scalia was terrible because he weakened OSHA, he weakened worker protections, but then what about that damned Alexander Acosta? He resigned amid intense scrutiny over his role as the U.S. attorney in 2007 and 2008 when he approved a lenient plea deal for Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, that's a pretty crappy labor secretary. Why was he a labor secretary? Hey, Alexander Acosta, you helped out my boy Jeffrey Epstein, so now you get to be labor secretary. A financier convicted of child trafficking related charges. The deal, which shielded Epstein from federal prosecution and kept the victims in the dark, sparked outrage when revisited during Acosta's tenure as labor secretary. A 2020 Department of Justice review found Acosta exercised poor judgment in the case, though it stopped short of recommending professional penalties. Critics argue this scandal tainted his legacy, undermined his credibility in a role meant to protect workers, some of whom are vulnerable to exploitation, like that in the Epstein case. His tenure is also marked by relatively modest policy achievements, with detractors claiming he did little to advance labor rights amid a booming economy. What the hell does the labor secretary even do? Shouldn't they give like big speeches and stuff? Shouldn't they like look at the labor statistics and then sort of find out, what would be best? You don't want the unions to run over the corporations and sink the corporation. So you do want a strong corporation, but you want union protections, employee free choice. You want more people to organize. If I had a corporation, I'd want my workers to be organized. Even Hitler took all the labor unions away, but he put them under one umbrella labor union. So even Hitler was, smart enough to have his own labor union. Athena. James J. Davis served during a tumultuous period under the presidents Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover. His long tenure overlapped with the lead up to the Great Depression. Yeah, that's a pretty crappy labor secretary. Hey, James J. Davis, what did you do as labor secretary? Oh, you brought in the Great Depression. Well, that sucks. He's often faulted for failing to foresee or mitigate the labor crises that ensued. However, his era's challenges were systemic, and his record includes progressive efforts like advocating for child labor restrictions. On the flip side, Frances Perkins, 1933 to 1945, is often hailed as one of the best for her New Deal achievements like Social Security and the Fair Labor Standards Act. That is pretty good. Frances Perkins helped get Social Security and the Fair Labor Standards Act, and they're trying to undo that right now. Both of those things shows how context shapes judgment. Secretaries like Acosta and Scalia operated in less dire times, but faced backlash for perceived inaction or missteps. And that's it. What makes a labor secretary the worst to you? I don't know. I'm going to have to go outside and get some work done.